Hey everyone, I'm just going to walk you through the Thingiverse assignment and getting something printed on your printer with the FlashPrint software. So let me go ahead and share my screen so that we can walk through this together. And you can see here when I go to Thingiverse, lots of options as far as what's out there. You just want to search through till you find something that interests you. And um, they've got all kinds of things from Baby Yoda to things for 3D printing masks, holders for your masks, lots of options. Here's a cute little goose with a keychain. Keep in mind when you see things that are multicolored, that your printer prints everything in one color. So you can take the design and print it all you want, but the design's going to come out as one solid color. And then if you want, you can paint something or add some detail to it. Some things may have different colored pieces and you might print them separately and then put them together into something at the end. But I was interested in this panther origami because we are the Central Panthers in our district. You can see here when I go to any of the designs, I can take a look at them in a larger size, whatever pictures that they share. You can also take a look at the file itself. And underneath it, some things that I would look out for is to go ahead and read through some of the comments that people leave. So if they've got some comments here, made some suggestions, sometimes they give you some tips about printing. This one said, make sure that you use supports for the tail and so on. So it needs to be printed with some supports as you go through there. And then it has these thing files. So the files that you're looking for, you can download all of them. This one happens to just have two. What you really need for your software is the STL file. And you'll just download that to your computer so that you have it. Then when you go to the FlashPrint software, the first time you open it up, it will ask you to choose your machine type. So from the drop down, you can choose our Adventurer 3 Lite, which is the one that we have now. Go ahead and click OK. What that does is it sets it up so that your machine specifications are already preloaded and ready for you, so it knows what your machine can handle as far as size of objects go. Then you're going to hit this load button and it's going to ask you to find the file. So I'm going to look, it's going to ask for access to files that I have in my folder. I'm going to go ahead and take a look. Mine are in my downloads. I have to get permission for that as well. And then I can grab that STL file. So you can see here, I brought it into the software. I can take a look at that, make sure that it fits within the parameters of the space, and it does just fine. That Panther also, if I wanted to scale it or change the size of it, if you hit the scale button, you can adjust it, and by changing the percentages on one of them, as long as the uniform scaling is taken care of, and I would recommend that almost always you want to do it that way. You can change one, it will change them all. So if I wanted to print this at 50% of the size or 120% of the size, I could increase or decrease them in increments like that. I can change from millimeters to inches. I can adjust a lot of those dimensions. I can also rotate and change how it's standing. Somebody suggested printing it on its back actually made for a more successful print, less supports needed for that. And you can adjust those as you want. You can move things, move your object around. So you can drag and drop it, or you can set specific places that you want to move it to. You can adjust it with the arrows. if it comes in. Sometimes you'll have designed something where you bring in a file, it'll actually sit out here in the space outside your main platform. You can say, hey, place this on the platform or center it, and that will move it into the space where it needs to be. So I've got my design here. You can see if I drag him out, it gives me that warning if he would not be within the space that it can handle. And so that's helpful too. You'll know right away if you see one of those red lines, that somewhere it is going off the space that can be printed by your printer, and you can either scale it down or try rotating it or moving it, adjusting it to make it fit better on that build plate. So I'm now going to look at adding some supports because this is not a simple flat object. I'm going to want to make sure that I use supports so it doesn't fail printing. Right now, as it starts to print, it's only going to have little tiny touch places where those feet are that are attached that it's going to have to use to hold this whole object as it begins to build. So something like that can be kind of tricky. And have more print failures than others might. So I can go in here and I can look at adding supports to that. If you go into your support options, you can set the type of supports that you like best. I'm fond of linear supports. They're a little easier to me to pull out and disconnect. Some people like the tree-like supports where they only touch in specific places where they're needed. You can adjust and look what those are at. You can say, hey, I only want supports that touch the platform. I don't want any supports that are in between things. And so you can check that off if you want it. And I'm going to say, okay. I always start with auto supports. I wait and see where does it add them. So you can see here it's finished generating those supports automatically for me. And I can scroll around here and take a look, and all of those make sense to me. All right, you can see here, it clearly felt that it needed supports on the tail, just a little bit right here at the tip of the tail, and that might be because the angle here that the tail goes up, it feels it's able to build that without having supports go the whole way along the tail. If I wanted to, I could actually come in here and add supports on my own. So I could come in and say, you know what, I think I actually need one here. And I could add those additional supports in. You can just click and add. You can see here one by one if I wanted to have those supports all along the tail as opposed to just where I put them, and I can stack those supports in there as I want to. I can also clear specific supports. I can say, hey, I don't want those additional supports that I just added. I'm going to stick with the recommended supports that are already there and hope that that is enough to help my print be successful. Once I've got the supports in that I want, I'm going to go back and I'm ready to go ahead and prepare this for printing. So when I hit the print button, it's going to give me a number of different options. I can want to preview what's going to happen. I usually leave that turned on. I usually don't do print when slice is done. That would send it straight to the printer. And I like to sometimes look at the slicing, how much time it's going to take, what type of material it's going to use, because sometimes I decide to cancel and go back and change that. We are printing most likely with PLA. Filament, so you're going to switch that to PLA. You're going to enable those supports because we put them on there. You can choose to enable or disable a raft. So a raft would also give you something a little sturdier to print your Panther in this case on. It would give a flat base that it would then print on top of, so that raft would stick well to the build plate, and then the rest of it would build on top of it. So you may, for an unusual shape like that, want to go ahead and enable a raft. I would do that here. And then you can choose what kind of resolution that you want. So you can do like a faster, low quality, standard, or high high quality depending on what kind of finish you want as you go through here. For a lot of things, I'm going to be honest, for the classroom, low is just fine as you go through doing that. If you find that that's not a great quality for something, you can change to standard, and you can play between the two of them to see like how much time is it going to take and how much material is it going to take to do that. I very rarely add a wall or a brim. Sometimes, and you can see here, this is a wall around the model, scrape oozing from the extruder, not really necessary. The brim kind of expands the outline of the bottom layers, which helps anchor it on there. So it might help something not to warp as it's building. Again, not necessarily needed, and may actually be difficult to get off of something like this. So I'm going to let that go as well as I go through here. If I click on more options, there is far more detail that you can adjust in here. I'm going to be honest, for most of your purposes, I never go in and make those changes. So I never change any of those as I go along here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click OK to let it know that I'm done. It's going to ask me to save this. Now your file came in as an STL file. That is the file of your object that you created. In order to send it to the printer, it needs to send it in a language that it understands. So what it's going to do is slice that, which means it's going to show what it looks like, how each of those layers are created by your printer. And that's done with a Gcode file or ends in a .gx file format here. So I'm going to name this Panther. I'm going to go ahead and save that right to my downloads. You can see here it's going to go through and slice that and get it ready. One of the cool things that I really love about the FlashPrint software is it shows me here, this is my printed model with the supports and the raft that I've selected to add on there. It's going to be 125 layers, and this is kind of cool even for your students to see. So you can see as I go down through there, I can see what it's going to look like all the way from the first layer it's going to lay down, and as that builds, how that design is created. You can even see the infill here of the object. That's what the inside of it. So kids often will ask is it solid? Is it hollow? How did it do that? It almost has like a honeycomb infill structure there that helps it to be. So 125 layers. It tells me that at the current selection, it's going to take about an hour and 15 minutes to print. It's going to use about 5 meters of filament. And so I can I can do a weight estimation too. How much of that is that going to be? And it's ready. So if I had this, my computer actually connected to my printer, I can tell it to go ahead and send the Gcode, and it will ask me to select my printer, or I can simply save this. This file is saved as a Gcode file. I can put it on a thumb drive and plug that thumb drive into my printer and print it from there. So you can see if I come back, I can go through that again and change those options. So I can go from a low standard to a high. I think that was standard that I did. Let's see here what I get when I click OK. Let's see again, Panther 2, slicing. All right, so that must have been about an hour and 15 minutes, 6 meters of material as I go through there. And if I did a high quality, let's see what I get then. 3. So you can see from the lowest to the highest. Now this is going to use 7 meters of material and take 3 hours and 46 minutes. When you're doing a lot of projects in the classroom, you probably don't want to take that much time to do that. In my downloads here are those files. This is all I need to print to my printer. And even if I didn't, like right now, I'm not near my printer to be able to plug in and do that, I can pull that file later and send it straight to the printer. So that's all there is to it. The FlashForge, the FlashPrint software that comes with your FlashForge printer. And things from Thingiverse. The other cool piece about Thingiverse is you don't just need to take other people's designs, but you can actually take these STL files, and just like I brought them into the FlashPrint software to get it ready to go, I can also bring it into Tinkercad and combine it with my own design. So I actually could make something and put this panther on the top. So if I wanted to create an award or some sort of trophy, I could use this in there. It would be very hard for me to design. I don't have those skills to design something like a panther, but I don't have a problem creating a really cool trophy and putting the panther on the top to make something out of what something found, something new. So you can combine those pieces in Tinkercad, which is our module 2 tool that you'll have to learn. So I hope that that is helpful as you get started, and have a great week. Reach out if you have questions.